Like we said, this webinar was initially for teachers in Hong Kong to help them with Edpuzzle in the unique situation that we're in here in Hong Kong. But we invite anybody, and it's just general good practice for Edpuzzle. So anyone's welcome, and I hope you'll find some value in the session. So I'll start with introductions. My name is Adam Hill. I am an Edpuzzle ambassador for the Asia Pacific International Schools. So I've done lots of, well, not lots, I've done a few presentations about Edpuzzle in the past, but now it's a bit more official because I'm an ambassador for Edpuzzle. I'm the innovation lead at Victoria Shanghai Academy, which is in Hong Kong. I know that's confusing. So I work with all the primary ages and a little bit of secondary as well, working on STEM and technology and design. And I'd love to connect with you if we're not connected already on Instagram and Twitter, Adam Hill EDU. But before we go any further, that's me, but I would like to know more about you. Please let us know in the chat who you are, where you're joining from, what grades you teach, what subjects you teach. I look forward to seeing those in the chat. Location, role. Fumi's joining from Brazil. I'd like to know what time it is in Brazil, Fumi. Can you add that to the chat as well? Must be very early. 5 a.m. Well, thank you for joining at 5 a.m, Fumi. I hope it'll be worth it. Who else is with us today? Bharvi. I hope I said that correctly, Bharvi. I know you from Instagram and Twitter, of course, from India. Rebecca in Hong Kong. Vidya. I've seen your name so many times because we're connected, but I've never said it out loud. So please let me know if I said that incorrectly, Vidya. So people from India, Brazil, Hong Kong, all over the world. So but I hope this will be useful, whatever grades you teach, whatever subjects, and wherever you are, I'm sure you'll find some value. Okay. So the objectives for today are to very briefly recap Edpuzzle and its features. We haven't got time for an in-depth tutorial. I'm not going to show you how to do these things. You can learn that on your own if you don't know already. There are lots of videos, especially on YouTube. But we are going to quickly recap to make sure we're all on the same page, what Edpuzzle is and what the features are. We're going to do a bit of a deep dive into flipped learning, understanding that model and the rationale behind that model. And don't be put off if you're not interested in flipped learning or you just don't feel like you can adopt a flipped learning model. Don't worry. We're just going to learn from the principles and the practices of flipped learning because any teacher can apply those. And we're going to use Edpuzzle to apply those best practices. So the session today is really about video learning, very generally, but you'll realize that a lot of those best practices regarding video learning can be applied through Edpuzzle. So just to make sure we're on the same page, very briefly, we're going to talk about what Edpuzzle is. There's a very short video here. Edpuzzle allows you to make any video interactive and turn it into a video lesson. You can embed your own questions to the videos, notes, and voiceover. And really importantly, you can track your students' progress, which we're going to talk about today, and how to use that data. So we'll just watch a short video just to make sure everyone understands what Edpuzzle is, what it includes. And if you're very familiar with Edpuzzle, I still encourage you to listen because it's a fairly recent video. There might be some new features that you didn't know about.
Kids these days are learning how to do almost everything through video. Videos feel personal, are highly visual, and let you control the pace at which you learn. But when you try to show a video in class, you might not always get the best results. Sometimes it's hard to know if students are paying attention or if they're actually learning anything. But with Edpuzzle, turning a video into a dynamic lesson is easy. You can add questions anywhere in your video, so you can check comprehension and get students to engage in critical thinking. You may not always have time to find a video and add your own questions, but don't worry, the entire Edpuzzle community has got you covered. Scroll through our library of teacher-created content and get inspired by what other educators like you are doing in their own classrooms. Or choose from our standards-aligned Edpuzzle originals, Instructional videos with built-in practice created with you and your students in mind. With the time you save, you can focus on other important things. Sometimes the video content you're looking for doesn't exist yet, so why not try making it yourself? Edpuzzle's screen recording tool lets you create the video that fits your students' needs. When you're done, you can edit the video and embed questions all in one go. Your students will appreciate seeing a familiar, friendly face as they learn. Once you're ready to assign your lesson, that's when the magic happens. You can hold students accountable for watching the entire video and monitor as they watch it at their own pace. Then, use Edpuzzle's real-time analytics to figure out who's ready to move on to the next lesson and who needs a little more help. That way, you can decide how to best use your time in the classroom. So, the next time you want to assign a video, let Edpuzzle be your guide. You'll be
Okay, everyone. So like I said, the webinar today is really assuming that you have some knowledge of Edpuzzle already. We're not going to go into this any further, but it's okay if you don't. All you really need to know is what you can see here on this slide. And if you've never done it before, it's really easy to do. I'm sure you can go on later, you can have a play. And if you need to, you can watch some tutorials in your own time. But Edpuzzle is a really easy platform to use and a very beneficial one.
Kids these days are...
So the key questions today, moving on from that, remember we're thinking about best practices today. So what are best practices regarding video learning? We're going to spend a lot of time thinking about that today. So how can you really take video learning to that next level? And what will also come up is what is the best use of face-to-face class time when you are with the students? What's the best way of using that time? Because we've all had time online in the last few years. We've all been teaching remotely, I'm sure. So now that we're back in class, or hopefully back in class, what is the best way to use that time? If we're just lecturing, it's the same as being on Zoom. So we're going to explore both of these questions today. So that time in the classroom really is valuable, and all teachers know that, we can feel that, but it's also supported by the research. The research very clearly shows that that time in the classroom is valuable, it's very precious, time where students can work together, collaborate, peer-to-peer, but also time with their teacher, that's really beneficial. In fact, there are few things more beneficial than the teacher relationship, few things that are more impactful on a student's learning than that relationship with a teacher. So we know that that time is valuable, so how are we using it? This study was by Robert Marzano, I hope I'm saying that correctly, and it was data gathered from 2 million US schools. And the research showed that the classroom use is really in 3 parts. There are 3 main ways that teachers use classroom time. And there is a big blue section, as you can see here, that's more than half of the time. So I haven't told you what these are because I want you to guess. So the blue section represents more than half of the time we do something. Then there's the red section, is about a third of the time we do something else. And then there's the yellow section, which is actually 6%. So I'm curious in the chat, I'm curious if you can guess what these sections represent. How are we using the time in the classroom? Bharvi says giving instructions, the blue section. What do you think the red section is? Or the yellow section? Or anyone got any other ideas? So Bharvi says more than half of the time we're giving instructions. Give you another minute to get your guesses in. Red disciplining, that's an interesting guess. Rebecca says doing the task, red. Feedback, yellow, interesting. Yellow is the task at hand, says Bharvi. All right, I'll tell you. So remember, this is research over 2 million schools, primary and secondary. So this is a really big study. And Robert Marzano found out that the blue section, interacting with new content. Now, to be honest, I didn't really know what that meant. So I looked online to make sure that I was interpreting it correctly. And it's pretty much what Bharvi said. It's giving instructions, it's lecturing. 56% of the time, were lecturing. Now that is worse in secondary than primary, as the study shows, but 56% is kind of an average for both primary and secondary, just lecturing, where students are listening passively while the teacher's doing all the work, the teacher's doing the talking. The red section is where students are practicing a new skill, so some kind of activity where they're practicing the new skill or the new content. And only 6% of the time, students are taking part in cognitively complex tasks where they really have to use their thinking, they really have to use their brain and push their understanding. This is problem solving, puzzles, inquiry, all of those really cognitively complex tasks, only 6% of the time. So there's a problem here. We're not making the best use of this valuable time. Most of the time, more than half of the time, students are just passively listening. So that brings us on to flipped learning. What is flipped learning? So by moving entry-level information, the lecturing, outside the classroom, typically, but not exclusively, through self-paced scored videos, teachers can reframe learning so that students spend more instructional time engaged in deeper discussions, hands-on applications, and project-based learning. So the idea is if we can take all of that lecturing and put it online in a video form, or not always videos, but in some other form before the lesson, then we will have more time in the classroom for the cognitively complex tasks like project-based learning, deeper discussions, and application. So here's just another short video that explains how and why this lady is flipping her classroom. And you'll notice here as well, she's just got like a whiteboard or a sheet of paper or something, very low tech. It doesn't have to be overwhelming. You don't have to be a techie teacher. But let's listen to her reasons and everything she says about lecturing and the problem with lecturing. Remember, that's 56% of the time on average.
I've been teaching math for the last 5 years, and this is why I flipped my classroom. This is what my classroom used to look like. I was teaching to the middle group of the class, the students that could follow along with what we were doing, and we were going through the content, while I had a group of higher level students not challenged, bored with the information, ready to move forward. And I had a struggling group of students that were not receiving enough effective remediation. They didn't have the basic content they needed to be working on the content we were currently covering, or they needed more help in order to be successful.
So that 56% of the time when we're just lecturing, we're not even reaching all of the students anyway. They're passive and it's not even relevant to some of them. She talks about here 90% of the time and 10% of the time. I'm not sure if that's an exaggeration, but so take that and don't take that as face value, but the majority of time and the minority of the time.
Led to a 90% use of class time being spent on delivery and review of content. 90% of the time I was at the front of the classroom lecturing to a group of students and I wasn't meeting all of their needs. 10% of class time was actually spent on application, which led to, depending on students, to do the application needed to be successful. They had to go home or outside of class and work on applying the concepts that I was giving out in class. This constant battle of not reaching the needs of all students and feeling the need to differentiate for all of my learners allows teachers to feel overwhelmed and ineffective because we see the need for differentiation, but there's just not enough time for effective differentiation. This called for a drastic change in how we teach. This is where flipping the classroom comes in. Now the students outside of class preload the content. They get the information they're going to need for class. They can pause, rewind, and rewatch the videos as many times as they need to. They can post questions online to their classmates or to the teacher. And it's a self-paced program where they can be remediated by going back and reviewing former topics, or they can work ahead when they've already mastered a concept and are ready to look forward.
So that's key, and we're going to talk about this later. One of those best practices is allowing students to pause and rewind and rewatch as many times as they need, or in some cases, they don't need to do that. They're already mastering the content. So by creating a video, it's less time for us, and it's more beneficial for the students because it is self-paced and they can take ownership of how many times they watch it, how they watch it.
They get the content here before class, so that when they come into class, my whole classroom has now shifted, where I'm at the center of the class, working between these differentiated groups, focused on different pieces of application.
So the part of the learning that's least beneficial, where they're just taking in information, they're listening to content, now that's online before the lesson, so that really valuable classroom time is all spent on application and deeper learning.
I can now work between each of these groups that are moving at their own pace. This has created a 90% use of class time spent on application of the content, and 10% of class time is spent on delivery of content, when I can answer questions that have been posted or take any other questions that have come up from applying the content. Now in my classroom, all students are engaged and challenged. I have time to work with each group, give them individualized time and instruction as they need, and I can actually work between each of the groups to provide effective differentiation for all my varied groups of learners. My struggling students, my middle group of learners, and I can now extend and expand on my higher level students' prior knowledge and challenge them in the classroom.
All right, so before we go any further, I want to just address a few misconceptions, what flipped learning is not. So flipped learning is not the same as hybrid learning, blended learning, remote learning, and all these other phrases that we've heard so much about during COVID. Flipped learning is a practice where the delivery of content is shifted online before class, so that the classroom time with the teachers, with their peers, is all on application and deeper learning. Flipped learning is not just for techie teachers. You don't need all the fancy technology and video editing skills. You can just sit in front of the camera with a whiteboard or a worksheet. It really doesn't have to be so complicated and difficult. In fact, all of those other bells and whistles with video editing is probably just wasting time when you just need to get the lesson out there. It's not just for all the students. This can work really well with the revision of content, especially when students can revisit the videos and watch them again. So it is good for exam preparation and things that you associate with all the students, but you can use this with any students. And flipped learning is not easy for students. This idea is connected to homework. So of course the homework might be easy, they're just watching videos, but it's not easy because in class, they're doing all of the heavy lifting. Now it's not 50% time listening to the teacher, it's 100% of the time actively engaged in the lesson. So maybe the homework is getting easier, but the class time is way harder than it was before, and that's a good thing. So here's John Bergman, one of the pioneers of flipped learning, saying flipped learning is not about the videos. It's about the active learning that can take place in class because of the videos. So I think there's another misconception that flipped learning is all about videos, but it's not. It's about the active learning that takes place in class. And by the way, it doesn't have to be videos. It could be any kind of preloading of content. Another alternative is to have all the students watch a different video. And then when they come together, they share all of their ideas. So with the jigsaw flip, each group watches a different video that's related in some way. Then the group members become an expert of that topic. And then when they come together, the groups share in a jigsaw style and make connections. So for example, when the 4 groups get together, complete the jigsaw by sharing all of that knowledge. Here's an alternative to doing it at home. If maybe your school doesn't give homework or just not appropriate for your school, they call it the in-flip. So the flipped lessons, the video content is actually in the class. So the teacher will prepare instructional videos for independent groups in the class. So not one video for the whole class, but for one group. It would work well in a station rotation model, as you can see in the diagram here. And it's just a way of reducing that teacher-student ratio. So you can work with fewer students and offer more personalized instruction. So if you look at the diagram here, in the top corner, at the top of the diagram is a small group working with the teacher. To the right of the diagram, these are students just working independently together, collaborating. And then at the bottom left, this is the group working on the flipped videos. So it doesn't have to be at home. It could just be a way of delivering the content to one group while you work with smaller groups. And then the teacher can move around when it's appropriate. So flipped learning is not always about homework. I thought this was really interesting from another pioneer of flipped learning. Someone once asked if I just like flipped learning because it's the students doing all of the work, to which I said, precisely. Right? The person who said this to him, it was almost like an accusation, like you're being lazy. But the fact that students are doing all the work is a good thing. In class, it should be the students working hard. Teachers are working hard outside of class. It's the students who should be working the hardest in class. It's the students who should be doing most of the heavy lifting cognitively. So precisely, it is the students doing all of the work. So this brings us on to video learning best practices, how to apply them specifically on Edpuzzle. By the way, are there any questions so far before I move on? All good, people are shaking their head, all good, we'll carry on, but feel free to just shout out or put it in the chat whenever you have a question. Give me a thumbs up if this is all making sense so far. Great, thank you. All right, so best practice number 1, students learn best from their own teachers. So of course there are, Edpuzzle allows you to take videos from other places, videos that other teachers have made, or videos from Edpuzzle originals, or videos from YouTube, and that's fine. That's not bad practice. It's just not best practice. Students will always learn best from their own teachers, someone they can relate to, someone who they know, and it's just more personal that way. And by the way, all of these best practices are not just ideas from me, they're all research-based. So students learn best from their own teachers. We know the 3 R's of teaching: relationships, 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 and that's key even with the video learning. So as much as possible, not always, but as much as possible, try to get you in the videos. So as much as possible, record your own videos and then upload them to Edpuzzle. Or in Edpuzzle, you can do screencasts where the students hear your voice. You don't always have to do that. You can find videos from other people, other teachers, and from other places online. But even then, you could add a voiceover. Edpuzzle allows you to do the voiceover for the video. And even when students are hearing your voice, even when they're not seeing your face, that's also beneficial. And even if you don't want to do a voiceover for the whole thing, you could stop at certain points in the video and add audio notes. So I really recommend any video that you share, at least some audio notes so the students are listening or seeing you. That's best practice number 1. And Edpuzzle allows you to do that in very quick, easy ways, even if you don't want to make the whole video. Best practice number 2 is that videos should be interactive to ensure active learning. So videos shouldn't just be students listening and watching. They'll quickly get distracted, watch something else, or go to another website. So they should be interactive to ensure the students are active in their listening. So we know that Edpuzzle can allow for lots of ways for making videos interactive: open-ended questions, multiple choice questions, notes throughout the video, and audio notes. And if nothing else, the really low-tech way of doing this is when students are watching a video, they should be taking notes. So that's the really low-tech way of doing it. But students shouldn't just be watching. There should be something else that students have to do in response to the video to keep them active in their learning. Best practice number 3 is that homework should be short and surface level. Now, this might sound controversial, but homework should be as short as possible, and the learning doesn't need to be deep. And the reason for that, research on the effectiveness of homework is mixed, and that's saying it politely. At best, it's mixed. Lots of homework says it's completely worthless, especially for primary students, especially with young students, it's completely worthless. Of course, the research is mixed. It doesn't all say that, but it's certainly not favorable. So we're putting a lot of stress on students and a lot of stress on parents doing all these activities at home, practicing activities and applying the concepts at home when that's not effective. And they don't have the support of their peers and they don't have the support of their teachers. So if we do have to do homework, it could be short videos, surface level input, and then when they come in class, they apply it. The negatives of homework can outweigh the positives. All the stress it causes. Lots of parents don't feel like they can support. They don't know the content well enough to help their children. So it puts a lot of stress on the parents, a lot of stress on the students. So we can keep it simple with videos, and that will be beneficial in lots of different ways. We can offer the short surface level input through Edpuzzle, still with the interactivity, of course, but then we come back to school to apply it. Now, students should be held accountable for watching videos. There needs to be some accountability to make sure that they do it. We can, on Edpuzzle, we can skip, we can disable the skipping, so students can't skip ahead in the video. We can make it so the students can't click on any of the websites. You know, I do this sometimes. If I'm watching a YouTube video, I can also check my email at the same time, but then I'm not very good at multitasking. Nobody's good at multitasking. So we don't really listen and we don't really learn from the video. With Edpuzzle, anytime they click onto another website or open another tab, the video will stop. So with Edpuzzle, we can keep them accountable for watching the whole video without being distracted by other websites. We can track students' progress and their responses on Edpuzzle. So even we can see how much of the video they watched. We can see if they stopped before the end. We can see if they watched half of it. We can see if they watched 10% of it. All of that is tracked on Edpuzzle, as well as their responses to the questions and the notes that we add. And address issues as soon as they come up, as soon as they arise. So if you have a student who should be watching the video but didn't, address that straight away in whatever way is appropriate for your school, whatever way is effective. Contact the parents, contact the students, but whatever you do, hold them accountable so that it doesn't happen in the future. And a very simple way of doing that with the flipped classroom, if a student didn't watch the video, then they can't take part in the activities applying it. When the rest of the class are applying the activities through collaborative, fun, hands-on activities, they have to watch the video first. So they'll very quickly learn that they are accountable and they need to follow those instructions. Best practice 5 is that students' interactivity should be monitored. We can do this on Edpuzzle, and it should be used to inform our planning, inform the next steps for those students. So Edpuzzle does a really good job of tracking all of that information, giving you all of that data, especially regarding the questions that you ask in the videos. Students respond, and we can see all of those responses, and then we can use that to inform our planning. Be transparent with students. Show them that you're going to use the information in that way. Then they will take it more seriously. It's not just a video. Edpuzzle is not just an alternative to YouTube. You get all of this really important information that you are going to use. And utilize that data and the real-time analytics to inform your planning and the students' next steps. Just from Edpuzzle, you should be able to see which students are struggling with the concepts, which students are fine with the concepts, and use that to inform. And number 6, we mentioned this already. Students should set the pace for their learning. They should be able to pause the video if they're struggling with something or it's going too fast. They should be able to rewind. They should be able to rewatch the whole thing. So allow students to take ownership. Support them, the ones who need more time and more clarification. They can do that themselves. They can take ownership. Store the videos in a shared location to allow students to revisit them anytime. So a few final tips. Keep videos short. So as a rough rule of thumb, 1 to 1.5 minutes per grade level. So for a grade 4 student, the video should be around 4 to 6 minutes, something like that. Keep them short. In fact, multiple short videos is better than one long video. It's just more motivating. Nobody wants to open a video and see 20 minutes. Short and sweet. Use multiple choice questions because, well, not all the time. There's certainly a place for open-ended questions, but multiple choice questions will give you the automatic grading on Edpuzzle. And it will support those who struggle with writing, especially the really young grades. Start small, especially if you're going to adopt a flipped learning classroom. Start small, perhaps with a topic that students struggle with, one that you really want to revisit and revamp. You don't have to do your whole curriculum. It's certainly not straight away. Start small. Start with one unit or one lesson and see how it goes. Videos don't have to be perfect. Live lessons never are. When you're teaching in front of the class, you've got one shot. You don't get to do it again. You don't get another take. You don't get practices. So treat your videos like that. They don't have to be perfect. It's okay if you stutter or sneeze. Don't worry about it. just get the videos out there. And actually teach students how to engage with videos and model the behaviors, especially at the beginning of the year. If you're going to make a habit of this, show them what it looks like to watch a video actively. Show them how to take notes. Show them how to engage with the notes. So just model all of the behaviors that we expect to see, and that will make it easier for the rest of the year. If you want to keep learning about this, there's lots of ways that you can do that for free, especially if you're interested in the flipped classroom. There's a whole course that Edpuzzle offers on that, the Edpuzzle Flipped. It's about 90 minutes. You can work through the materials and get this badge yourself, Edpuzzle Flipped. But not just the Edpuzzle Flipped, there are loads of courses available on the website. All of them are free, some around 90 minutes, 60 minutes, 30 minutes, everything you need to know about Edpuzzle, but also just good practice in teaching, 21st century learning, self-paced classroom. Everything you need to know is on here, and you can collect the badges as you go along. These are all free, really, really good resource that not enough teachers are taking advantage of. But if you're really serious about flipped learning and you want to go more and you want to learn more, you want to go much deeper with it, there's actually the Flipped Learning Certified course. There is a cost for that, but it is really, really good. It will really explain the whole rationale and best practices and give you a lot of ideas on how to do that. And this is the kind of official one from the pioneers of flipped learning. But I really recommend you start with the Edpuzzle one, just 90 minutes. And if you're still interested after 90 minutes, then you can do the paid one. But really check out the courses from Edpuzzle. They're really good, and they're all free. So just a reminder of today's key questions. What are best practices regarding video learning? I hope you've learned something that you can apply to your classroom. And what is the best use of face-to-face class time? I hope there's some takeaways from today that you can apply even tomorrow straight away. In fact, I'd love to learn. Can you type them in the chat? Something you're going to apply with your students regarding video learning or regarding the class time. What's one or two takeaways from the session today, please? Yeah, Rebecca says that video learning can really help with differentiation. That's great. That's a good takeaway. That 56% of the time when we're just lecturing, most of the students, or not all of the students, are going to understand what we're saying anyway, even if they are actively listening. I'd like to try adding a pre-recorded video to myself, or just of myself, or just audio notes to begin with. I think that will have a really big impact, Bharvi. So just putting yourself in the videos, even if it's just a few audio notes. Remember, on Edpuzzle, you can do a voiceover for the whole video, or you can just embed voice notes here and there. Bharvi says personalized session. Yep. Oh, Vidya says, it felt the best practices applied to other forms of learning. Vidya, do you want to explain that? Do you want to just elaborate either in the chat, or you can unmute? That sounds really interesting. You don't have to unmute if you don't want to, but I'd like to know more about that. If you could elaborate.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes.
Yeah, I thought when you are talking about the 6 best practices,
Yep.
it apply to the normal classroom, like a traditional setting where you are teaching with a board kind of thing.
Yep.
That
Just
also, yeah.
So it can apply to any kind of learning, not just video learning. I think you're right. Best practice in teaching can often be applied in many different areas. Should be self-paced. Should be, what else? Should be interactive. Good. This is not just about videos. That's a really good observation. Video. Students should be held accountable. Definitely. What else? Yep. And interactive learning, active learning, and of course they learn best from their own teachers. Relationships are everything. So well done, Vidya. I think that's a really good observation.
Yeah, because it touched me, and that's touched me.
Yep.
When I was, yeah.
Fumi says, my takeaway of today's session, using different videos for different groups. I never did that, and will be great. It brings more autonomy to each group. That's great. Yeah, it'll give more autonomy, more personalized. And it might be a little bit of work to make those videos, but then you will have them every year after this. So I think invest that little bit of time now, and then you can use them in the future as well. But I think your students will really appreciate that, especially the struggling students. They get the instruction that they need, and especially the high ability students who, you know, we're really just wasting their time. We can push them further and get them to apply it in different ways. Connie,
Adam, there's one question about, would you please say it again, how we can do jigsaw flip?
Yes, let me go back. So that instead of giving one video to the whole class, for example, we could put them in 4 groups. 4 groups. So those 4 groups get 4 different videos that are connected about the same topic, but different videos. So they're learning different things in those videos. And then, so imagine there's a student in the red group. I'm looking at this jigsaw here. Imagine there's a student in the red group. They had one video. A student in the green group had another video. A student in the yellow group had a different video, and a student in the purple group had a different video. So these 4 students had 4 different videos, and they become experts on their video. So then when those 4 students come together, they talk about each of the 4 videos, they learn from each other. The student becomes a teacher about their video. So one student is the expert, teaches the other 3 in the group. So at the end of the activity, all 4 students know about all 4 of the videos. And that's another way of keeping students accountable. If they know they're watching the video and they have to explain it to other students tomorrow, that will keep them accountable. It will make sure they understand it. And then when they come back, all 4 students will know about all 4 of the videos. So I'm not sure if I explained that very well. Let me know if that makes sense, whoever asked the question. Oh, Bhavi gave an example, topic civilizations. Bhavi, do you want to unmute or type just to elaborate?
Yeah, so basically what we did was we uploaded videos of different civilizations, the Greek, the Chinese, the Mesopotamian, and they had to watch it, answer the questions and prepare. And then they came out in groups and they spoke about it. So the others who were sitting and listening to them made notes, and that's how the entire classroom learned about all the 4 civilizations. Not from the teacher, but from their peers itself. So
brilliant. So
it was more engaging as well.
Yeah, exactly. So 4 different civilizations. So you mean, for example, like Egyptians, Greeks, that kind of thing?
Yes.
Yeah. And then, so each group had a video about a different civilization.
Yes.
They all got together and then it was the students.
They came out in class and presented for themselves, like, like how you generally go to class and teach them that, these are the parameters, or these were the ways their lifestyle was so and so. So they all spoke about the common topics about their civilizations. Right. So the others learned about the other 3 civilizations from their friends.
Perfect. So that's a really good use of video learning. And any time the students have to be teachers, it's really good for consolidating their learning. Because you can't teach it unless you understand it yourself. So that's a really good practice, Bhavi.
True, thank you.
Any other observations or questions? Really take advantage of the certifications on the Edpuzzle website. You can use the QR code there, or just do a Google search for Edpuzzle courses and you'll find all of them. There's something for everyone's interests. Vidya, did you want to say something? I saw you unmuted.
Adam, we have to make our own videos, or we can embed some other video and make it interactive in Edpuzzle. Is there an option?
Exactly. So when you go to Edpuzzle, let me show you. I think we've got time that I can show you. When you go to Edpuzzle, you can literally find videos that other people have made. So I'll search here for fractions, for example. Just in the search bar, here are all the fractions videos. There are some from YouTube, some Edpuzzle originals, or some that other teachers have made and share. But you can click on any of these. For example, I'll click on this guy. I'll edit the video to make it my own, personalize it.
Okay.
So then this is where I can personalize it. I can cut the video if I don't need the beginning. And cut the video, cut the beginning, the middle, the end. This is where I can add the voiceover. So if you don't want that audio, you can put your own voice over the top, or with the questions, the multiple choice questions you can add, open-ended questions you can add. And this is what I was talking about, the notes. You can add a written note, but you can actually add audio notes as well. So
Okay.
even with other people's videos, take advantage of the audio notes and take advantage of the voiceover. So I can watch the video here.
Although that is
Here, I want to add a note. Then you can allow the microphone, record your message, and then when students get to that point of the video, they will hear your audio note.
Okay.
Video, does that make sense?
I'm excited to try this. Thank you, Adam.
All right. But do look around all the videos, and obviously some of them are better than others. Make sure you're happy with how the teacher or the presenter explains it. And if you can't find a good one, record it yourself.
Yes. Will do. Thank you.
Sometimes that's the quickest way, especially if we stop getting obsessed with perfection. Just record it in one take, press record, see what happens, and then share it. Don't worry about perfection. So I'll stay behind and just chat a little bit longer if anyone's got any other questions or observations. The only other thing I wanted to share is please connect with me on Instagram, Twitter, or my blog is there as well. If we're not connected already, I'd love to connect with you more. It's always good to connect with other teachers.